If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then the UK Property Market Stat Show, is for you. My name is Christopher Watkin. This week I'm joined by special guest Verona Frankish. We'll come to Verona in a second. Why should you watch this show? Well, the British are obsessed with the property market. Whenever the Land Registry throws some stuff out, it's always front page news. The Nationwide and the Halifax, it's front page news. But I don't know if you're aware, ladies and gentlemen, the Land Registry is looking at sales that were agreed 8, 9, 10 months ago. The Halifax and Nationwide are looking at sales that took place 2 or 3 months ago. We're looking at house prices and the property market from last week. So if you want the finger on the pulse of the property market, then this is for you. This week, as I said, I'm joined by Verona Frankish, who is the boss lady of Yopa. Very, very well thought of in the industry, a lady not to be messed around with. She calls a spade, and she certainly knows her onions. She runs Yopa, who is, she's going to correct me on the number, 6th, 7th or 8th in the UK.
7.
7, there you go. It's in that number, and what she doesn't know about estate agency isn't worth knowing. Thanks for joining me today, Verona.
Pleasure to be back. It's been a while.
It has been a while, so it's good to have you back. Ladies and gentlemen, the show itself lasts approximately 1 hour, split roughly in half. The first half talks about the UK property market, and we'll be looking at week 8 of 2026 and comparing that with week 8's all the way back to 2017. We'll also be looking at the year-to-date levels and then comparing and contrasting. In the second half of the show, we will be going to a town or a city and analysing the estate agents in that town and seeing who's the best. This week, we are going to the Stevenage in Hertfordshire, a town very well known by Verona and myself because we travel there most weeks through it on the East Coast Main Line. It will be interesting to see who is moving and who is shaking. If you're not from Stevenage, you might find that section a little bit boring. However, before you do switch off, do remember that we are going to be using a piece of software that an awful lot of agents use that analyze the agents and see who's doing really well. So if you're an agent who's suffering from competitors with overvaluing or competitors that with cheap fees, or long sole agency agreements, then there's independent data here which actually can prove that you are a better estate agent. So listen in, even if you're not from Stevenage, to watch that part of the show. Anyway, without further ado, let's start with the first part where we go and look at the UK property market. So here we go. So what normally happens, for those who've not watched the show before, is I spend probably 30 or 40 seconds looking at the numbers, and then we will go over to Verona for her thoughts. Okay, so let's kick off. This week, we have put on 38,577 properties. Compared to last week, and we'll just pull that up in a second, we're looking at around 36,400 last week, 36,500 the week before, and 36,900. So if we put that onto the graph, the white line is 2026, and you will see it's tracking very, very close to that orangey line, which is 2025. The average price of a property that's come on the market is 432, and year to date, we are on 281,000 properties, which is 1.2% ahead of last year, 9.5% ahead of 2024, 19.7% ahead of pre-COVID levels of 17, 18 and 19, and 13.3% ahead of the 10-year overall average. Over to you, Verona, for your thoughts on the listings.
I mean, I don't think there's anything mega different that's happening that has happened for a little while. So I think we're sort of reasonably status quo. Stock levels appear to be good across the sector. What's really evident for me right now, and I see this in our business, is the importance of pricing and the importance of marketing right now, because actually listings are in decent shape. There's a little bit out there of customers, I guess, a little bit of uncertainty, and they're just taken a moment to commit to bringing property to market over the last couple of months. We've seen that, and therefore it's really important that those conversations in the lounge are accurate and honest about pricing, and agents are standing out from the next person in terms of their marketing and how they're promoting what they're going to bring to the party to each vendor. So yeah, I think we're in pretty decent shape given we've just finished the second month of the year, and nothing major versus last year, and we're pretty much in line now, I would say.
Certainly. I mean, as I always say, estate agents have three main problems. Problem one is being called out to the valuation. Problem two is
Yeah,
losing it on the sofa to overvaluing or cheap fees. And the third one is getting the property sold. And,
yeah,
this primarily is the first problem is getting called out. And you're absolutely right. You've got the marketing of the property. And I think estate agents are really, really good at marketing properties. I think where they let themselves down is the marketing of themselves to be called out to the
to
valuations.
get in the room in the first place.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
And you know what? I think what I've seen, certainly in the last 6 months, is I think more and more agents are understanding the importance of that. What I'm seeing though is variance in the execution of said promotion of what they're bringing to the party.
very much so, very much so. It's a lot of agents are very guilty of making themselves the hero of their marketing,
Hmm.
when in
Hmm.
reality, if we make the vendor the hero, then you're more likely to be called out. I'm a massive believer that, you know, you need to be seen as the authority in your local property market, so they call you out. So your name's already there before they decide that they want to move, and that's where I think a lot of agents go wrong. They're trying to get the people who are just about to call for a valuation. If you get them 6 months before, and it's like most things, the shortcut is the long game. Right,
Yep, absolutely.
let's move on to price reductions and the number of price reductions this week. And again, we're looking at week 8, so just be aware. Week 8 was, and I'll just pull my calendar up just for anyone that wants to know, that was Monday the 23rd of February all the way through to include Sunday the 1st of March. So 20,882 price reductions, with an average price of the property being reduced at 400, 386. We had a dip last month, and this is February's figures. We haven't got all February's figures in, but we've got some, and we'll be sharing with you, ladies and gentlemen, what we've got so far. But just over, 1 in 10 or 11.4% of houses were being reduced, which I think is a one in nine. Again, 1 in 9 is just simply when 53% of homes only go through to exchange for contracts. I know I'm like a stuck record, but it's just not enough, is it?
I guess that very much depends on are they going on at the right price in the first place? Because everything we know about pricing is the more accurate you get it on listing, the greater chance of it selling, right? Because the price reduction, if it happens, does diminish the opportunity for that property to eventually complete. Albeit that if you're going to do it early, do it deep, make it meaningful, and wrap around a marketing package to go with that. So I think what is interesting to me, just to flip to the asking prices slide, Chris, I think we're seeing a slight adjustment on the average in terms of the asking price. And maybe some of that is about us getting more realistic prices on listing rather than going back and doing the price reduction 4, 6, 8, often 6 months later. So I think, the pricing conversation is a really, really important one, particularly now because we're seeing much more of a balance between a buyer's and seller's market. And I know you normally have some data on that, which I'm sure you probably share. But, last year was very much more of a seller's market, and that is now definitely much more adjusting to, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a buyer's market, but it's a much more balanced market from what I'm seeing and what the data seems to be telling us.
Ladies, you're absolutely bang on, as you know. This Property Stato is my nickname. If you want to know if you're in a buyer's or seller's market, ladies and gentlemen, you go to Rightmove, other portals are available, and type in your location and click all available properties, including sole subject to contracts. Okay, so let's just say you click that. Let's say you're in the beautiful town of Retford, which is nowhere near where you are, and there are 500 properties available and sold subject to contract. Okay, so that's available and sold all together. So you write that number down. You then untick the sold sticker button, which will then probably take that number down to say, I don't know, 300. Okay. So by definition, 300, 500 less 300 is 200. And then if you want to know if you're in a buyer's or seller's market, what is the percentage of 200 divided by the big number, which is 500, so that's 200 is the sale agreed numbers divided by the total number of properties for sale, which is available and sold subject to contract. So that's 200 divided by 500, which means that's 40%. And here are the numbers, ladies and gentlemen. If it is lower than 30%, it is a buyer's market. If it is lower than 20%, it's a very strong buyer's market. Anywhere between 30 and 40 is a balanced market. Anything above 40% is a seller's market. Anything above 50% is a strong seller's market. There you go. That is the science of knowing where you're in a buyer's or seller's market.
Well, you startle for nothing, do we? And as you
I get
rightly
called
point
many
out,
things.
Chris, yeah, exactly. That's the kinder thing. As you rightly point out, though, whilst we're looking at these numbers at a macro level, every single location, every single market will have a nuanced view on whether it's a buyer, seller, or a balanced market. So doing it in your local area will help you guide you in terms of how to price and to value properties.
You're absolutely right. My advice to you, ladies and gentlemen, is not to look at it in a standalone number, because we do this exercise for 120 estate agents around the country every quarter. Okay, because that's my daytime job. And it is the movement in that number that you need to watch, remembering that there is some kind of cyclical nature to the market. So therefore, the numbers are going to drift downwards at certain times of the year, which tends to be at Christmas and New Year. But just bear that, and a little bit in the summer, but just bear that in mind. It's the overall trend. That's what my advice would be. And if you were smart, ladies and gentlemen, you would not only do the whole town, but you do it in different, like, semis detached. And that is almost like a canary in the mine. If you wanted to spot if the market was slowing down a bit, is to spot that over a trend, but remembering the cyclical nature. If anyone is following that and they're worried, just give me a call. You can get me on social media. I'm like dog poo on a blanket. I'm everywhere, and you can get a hold of me. Right, let's move on to number of properties sold. There you go. Well, I'm at the studio today, and my wife is absolutely gutted that I'm here today because she says I do love Verona's the way she speaks and what she says.
Bless her.
No, we don't call her senior management for nothing. So this week we have sold subject to contract 26,600 properties. Okay, let's just compare and contrast that with previous weeks. 26,100 the week before, 26,600, 25,400. This is the best week so far this year. And I was expecting that because, again, we say this on most shows. The property market is like Groundhog Day. It is very, very predictable. Can you see the shapes of those lines, ladies and gentlemen? Again, it takes off after Christmas. We have a few wobbles here because there's a half term in here. Then we've got the three dips, and they've all got the same three dips, and that's always because of the two bank holidays and Easter. And then we have the August bank holiday there. So again, it is very, very cyclical. All we just need to know is whereabouts on are we on this. So we can normally predict the number of properties that have sold subject to contract within a couple of hundred in the UK every single week. Okay. The year-to-date figures.
Sorry, Chris, just on that point, the whole nature of patterns in business is how we all manage and prepare and strategize and plan in our business. And that's a really important point, because if we know what the patterns are, so if we look at last year, for example, the profile of last year was slightly different because we had that stamp duty build up January, February, March. We didn't have that this year. So therefore you're able to know that you're not going to have the peak in March, but you're also not going to have the cliff edge in April. So the profile of the pattern of this year is going to be slightly different. And I think that's really important as a business, branch manager or even a self-employed agent or whatever business you're running, to understand the pattern that's going to play out in the year ahead, and then prepare for that and market to that, prepare your customers for that, and manage your year around it. So those patterns are super important for us to not just be aware of, but use that as data and insight to help us plan ahead.
You can see, ladies and gentlemen, why we invite her on. She certainly knows her onions. The cumulative year-to-date sales agreed is 193,587, which is 5.9% below last year, 10% ahead of 24, 19.4% ahead of the pre-COVID 17, 18 and 19 years. Again, we say this every week, but you've got to admit, that's pretty good.
I think that's pretty good. I think that's really good numbers. And like I was saying earlier, that a well-priced, well-marketed property in most parts of the country right now are selling. And I obviously am an advocate of 20EA, and I review the data on a weekly basis, not just for our own business but for other businesses. And I look at sales rates because that is clearly one of the most important factors for any business. And I can see that sales rates right across the various different brands and the businesses that are doing well and are listing well and are marketing well, the sales rates are strong, and there is motivated buyers out there. It is our job as agents to present properties in a way that's going to attract the most buyers, and there is definitely buyers out there who are interested. So I think this is really encouraging. So we're seeing it at a macro level, but I'm also seeing it at a more localized level too.
Very much so. Again, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, you will see the 20EA platform in the second half of the show, and you can have that for your own town. Now, this could come across as a bit of an advert for 20EA. I can assure you it's not, but it is. I know you're a fangirl of it. I'm a hashtag fanboy.
Sure.
It really gives you, the name insight is what it gives. It gives you insight. And the amount of times I've seen an estate agent saying, in their town, the market's really slow. And you can go in and actually analyze it within seconds to show that the agent's having a bad month, the market's not. And I think we get very guilty of, mixing the two up. So,
Can I just highlight a very specific story on that, Chris? So over the last few days, there's somebody that I know who lives down south. I won't be specific, but in a very high-end premium property in a part of London that we don't really operate in with any significance. So he said to me, I want to list my property. Who should I list it with in the area? So I said, give me your postcode, give me the property, the value of the property. And I went into 20EA, and there's only really 5 agents in the postcode that he is living in that has any significance in particular at his price point. And I compared their data, their sales rate, and also the social media activity. So I went into the Instagram and had a look at how they were marketing properties. And there was one clear winner. And it took me 5 minutes to do that research because I had 20EA, and then I went in and did a quick scan on Insta. And to him, that was just incredible. So, this is data that we have that customers don't have, but we absolutely should be using that data in the lounge to position ourselves as agents.
so right. Right, let's move on. We next now look at what the difference between the average price coming onto the market versus the average asking price of a property going to sale agreed. So this week in week 8, the average price of a property coming on the market was 432,800, and the average asking price of a property that went to sale agreed was 353,700. I must stress to you, ladies and gentlemen, because some people think this, and it is incorrect. We're not saying that the average price of a property selling comes on at 432 and sells for 353. I don't know if you're aware, but not all properties have a same saleability rate, the chances of it actually selling. And the lower price properties have a higher propensity to sell, which drags the average down. Just for bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, a properties over £2 million have a 20% chance of selling. Properties under 250,000 have a 65% chance of selling. So that's what drags that average down. It's good to measure it on a week by week basis, and you can see the red line is the average asking price coming on, and the blue line is the average sale agreed price. And again, for those of you that say, well, we don't know what it's sold for, again, can I remind you, because I love my overvaluing stats. Apart from the year of COVID, every property that went sale agreed had an average difference between the final asking price and what it sold for. Never, ever goes anywhere between zero point 0.9 and 1, always is between, sorry, 0.9 and 1.3. So I would actually use that information on my valuations and say, this is, if you don't know what it sold for, just take 1% off. You will not be very far wrong. The percentage difference is 22%, which again is pretty normal at this time of year because the
Yeah.
gap gets bigger. This is a bit of a data geeks graph, but some of you might love it, some of you might not. Let's move over to something that's probably a little bit more interesting, is what percentage of the homes that you had on your books in February did you sell? As it's called, the Resi sell-through rate, and that's at 15.4%. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that's also bumbling along pretty averagely. If you look at the graph, you look at the trends. Obviously, the bit in the middle would completely skew it, but I think that's where we have been for a long period of time now. I'm interested that dip, was that Christmas dip or was that a January dip?
This here is a Christmas dip.
Yeah, the one just before the February one. I thought
Yeah,
it might have been
yeah, it's
yeah, I
that.
thought it
Yeah,
was a
that.
Christmas dip. Yeah, because yeah,
I just love the fact that they're all the same shape. Look, up,
exactly. It's
middle,
so
down.
predictable.
It is, and even there, look, is that it's the same shape. It's higher, but it's still the same
Yeah, but
shape.
it's still the same shape. Exactly. Which is what I was saying earlier about patterns, understanding your business pattern is so, so important. Yeah, so I don't think there's anything remarkable either about any of the numbers really that we've talked about thus far, to be honest. It seems to be bumbling along, not buoyant, not remarkable, not horrendous, but okay.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Is that, if people are coming onto this show to looking for some weird stuff, it isn't. And that's the lovely thing about the market is it's very predictable. As Verona says, spot the patterns and then work within them to be a better
Or
agent.
actually, what you should be doing is figuring out how do I, not within that pattern, how do I outperform the market in my local market? What are the things that are going to make me stand out from the next person, the next agent in my local market?
I mean, one thing that I always find fascinating is that estate agents go to sleep in October and November and December with their price reductions.
Yeah,
Every October.
interesting.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I always thought is this, and I know you want to get your sales through, and the number of
before
exchanges
Christmas.
is
Yeah,
before Christmas. But one thing that you could do to give your vendors an unfair advantage and yourself more sales in your pipeline going through to Q1 is
yeah.
looking very much on price reductions when no one else is reducing them, which makes your
Really
stock.
good point. Yeah. Freshens it up. But also, shocker, not everybody wants to move for Christmas. The idea of moving a couple of weeks before Christmas and having to decorate a house and get Christmas decorations and plan for Christmas as well is just hell on earth to me. So, actually getting it sold, securing a buyer pre-Christmas, and then getting moving in January makes much more sense to me.
Hey, that means that estate agents have to communicate with their vendors, and
Imagine that. Have a conversation. Come on.
I'm sorry,
But
no,
Tom
no, no.
Tom Greenacre, who works in my team, constantly says that sales and estate agency in particular is a contact sport, and that to me that is so straightforward and so obvious. But not everybody does that. Pick up the phone, have a conversation. We talk about this all the time.
I mean, the 10,000 vendor survey every year by the Property Academy. One of the questions they always ask is, what's the biggest thing that you don't like about your estate agent? And it is the magic communication.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, our negs, our 20 somethings, they're all over this, but they're not very good at picking it up and actually ringing people. Oh,
I would bet in most businesses in a state agency that if they look at their complaints data and the trends in the complaints data, the number one reason of complaints, and it is in mine, full transparency, is communication. And and quite often it's not that they've done anything particularly wrong. It's just that they haven't kept them up to date with what they are doing or what's happening. And that whenever it's something so obviously that can be resolved and you can fix, that's really challenging, right?
it's a bit like, my senior management would say, well, you probably you thought you said it in your head, but you've actually got to
Yeah,
say it. And there's no
to me.
excuse. There's no excuses because, we've got, I mean, my wife's just put her late auntie's property on the market and the two executors and and there's a WhatsApp group.
Yeah, of
But,
course.
you
Yeah.
know,
It's never been easier. Communication has never been easier. Well, everybody says this. We've never been more connected, but we've also never been less connected because we don't make the effort.
it's too right. Right, let's move on. Sell fall throughs 5,306 with a fall through rate of a sub 20. That's quite rare at 19.93.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, that is the percentage fall through rate is on the graph there. Again, ignore the
Good
Christmas
to see.
spikes. Okay. Now, interestingly, Brian Mansell, who works for Gazelle, who obviously specializes in fall throughs, I
Fall
said,
throughs.
Brian, the number of sale fall throughs are quite low this time of year. And he says, well, that is actually a Q1 thing because you've got all your sales through in December.
You flushed your pipeline.
Yeah, so therefore, everything that's in your pipeline is loads of it's quite young. So therefore,
Yeah.
and it's interesting again, just ignoring the is it notice, okay, let's 23 was a strange year, but let's hear, look, it does kind of take off, ignoring the Christmas spike. So yeah, it's great that we have different guests on the show that can give us
To bring
insight. Because now
something
you think,
different.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's obvious now. But
Yeah.
yes, there's the long-term trend. And again, as I said, the number of price reductions still, let's see what
Yeah.
happens. The percentage of pipeline, what percentage of your pipeline fell through? This is a great graphic. 5% of the estate agent sales pipeline fell through last month in February. Okay, although we're still waiting for the final. We've got what's it, anecdotal evidence numbers on that, but we're still
Yeah.
waiting. We'll get that next week.
But again, the trend is going in the right direction, right?
Certainly
Because
is.
the lower, the better.
It's interesting. I was talking to Brian Mansell, and he says, I mean, and I know other reservation agreement firms are available. He has over 2,000 estate agency offices using reservation agreements. And again, if you recall, we said at the top of the show, agents have problems. One is getting called out. Second is losing it to overvaluing and cheap fees. And the third one is getting it through to exchange. The two things that will help you if you get a sale agreed, that will help you get it through quicker, and thousands of agents prove this. One is getting the solicitors instructed on listing, and
Yeah.
secondly is reservation agreements. And again, a lot of valuers see it as a barrier to get the listing. If you do it the right way with the right mindset, it'll actually get you more listings. And if you haven't looked into
Absolutely.
it, then you're doing yourself a disjustice, but more importantly, you're doing the vendor a disjustice. Moving over net sales, absolutely cracking week this week, Verona,
Yeah.
21,314. Last week it was 21,100. We'll just pull this graph up. There's the white line. Again, it's nowhere near what it was in 21, but again, that was the crazy COVID years. Just to give you an idea of what, again, you know, 21, in 2021, it was 23,600. Not a million miles off that.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, that's excellent. And I think that there's massive difference in what you're buying for your money now versus in the COVID years. So the prices were hugely optimized. bearing in mind the demand at the time. So I think it's going to be the next couple of months for me is going to be super, super interesting to see how this pattern of this year and the profile of this year plays out as we get into now, which is really the meaty part of our year.
Also,
The next few months is spring selling season, and hopefully we get some spring weather to match.
we need it. There was this big silver disc in the sky yesterday. I don't know what it was. Maybe
I know, right? I know. It's been a while. I know it is the worst excuse in the book, right? Where the weather is rubbish, but it actually does make a difference.
certainly does. Right. Okay. So price changes as a percentage of listings and gross sales as a percentage of listings. I know some of you like that.
Yeah,
The exchange and withdrawn figures, the numbers look like they've fallen off a face of a cliff face there. Again, these are early doors because this number changes because we've got a lag of about 2 or 3 weeks. So these exchanges and withdrawals are stuff that took place at the start of February. So I wouldn't worry too much. Although this
yeah,
number doesn't really change. What percentage of houses leaving agents' books exchanged in February? 51.7%. Now that number will change and will probably go up by about 1 or 2%. That's through experience, but still, I know we keep banging on about it, but you have a
yeah. It's
one
not
in
a pretty
three
picture,
chance.
is it? Yeah,
In
yeah,
inner London, it's 1 in 3
yeah,
chance of selling. I mean, absolutely amazing.
yeah,
Number of properties for sale on the 28th of Feb going into the 1st of March. So stock levels are roughly very similar to what they were last year. The
yeah,
sales pipeline figures, we haven't had the final numbers through on that one, ladies and gentlemen. So again, we'll come back to that. UK rent. These are the UK rental. Again, just notice there that there's been a drop off in rents. Interestingly, Verona, I did some analysis. Rents as a percentage of tenants' take-home pay
Oh,
is
yeah.
is 7.8% less than it was in 2016. That
Yeah, so
absolutely blew my
that's
mind.
interesting because that'll be a combination, right, of increases in national living wage and increases in salaries generally. So it'll be a combination of that going up and rents getting squeezed more
Yes, I mean
recently.
the yeah, because the government produced stats and the rents are primarily, these things where people are they're saying that landlords are going to pass on the costs of the new renters'
Yeah,
rights bill. That doesn't work that way. Rents are driven by tenant affordability,
yeah,
and therefore one of the main drivers in an increase is rent salaries has been the minimum wage. I think the minimum wage has actually done more good for landlords indirectly because
totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. Different
uh,
question for what it's done for businesses, but we'll not go there.
no, let's not go there. What I have noticed is that everyone's not been pushed up. It's all been squeezed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Mhm.
is someone where I think Ian Preston was talking about the percentage difference between the average neg salary and the minimum wage 10 years ago was something like
Yes.
30%, and now it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Because
Right.
fees haven't increased in the same way, right? So revenue hasn't increased. So therefore, you have to find some way to absorb the costs.
Indeed, indeed. Right. Well, that's another. We won't go down that rabbit hole because we could be there for hours. Okay.
Okay.
Without further ado, we will now go to Stevenage and we'll have a look at that, and then you can give your final thoughts overall at the end. So here we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are using a platform called Insight. Insight is one of a number of platforms that the Firma 20 EA have. Insight is a bit like Rightmove Plus on steroids and has a lot more layers than an onion. And the art with this is to be able to read the data and extract information to make you look the best estate agent. So not only can it track where you are in the market, if you use it wisely enough, it can become a marketing tool as well. The platform itself, there's a free version of this, which gives you everything I'm about to show you, albeit only 3 months, just so you can have a play with it. There is a town where it gives you up 10 Postcode districts. I'm not mentioning any costs because I'm not on commission, but it's the price of a decent bottle of white wine and a very nice Chinese takeaway for four people. So we're not talking silly monies here. There is also a regional and there is also a national, and the only difference is the geography allows you to search. So if you're an agent who wants to know where you are in the market and overvaluing and cheap fees, then this is your information. This could be for you. But please don't mention my name. But if you want to mention Verona's, you potentially could, because then she'll get some brownie points off.
Yeah.
No,
Sadly.
no, sadly not. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to Stevenage, and the analysis is as follows. So here we go. As always, I look at the data and analyze it, and Verona, just jump in whenever you see something that catches your eye, okay? If you're watching this on a mobile phone, my advice is that you stop straight away and then and watch on a bigger screen, because there's a lot of data absolutely flying around here. Just so I can declare and up front, I work for one of these agents in this town. I work for Avocado, so I think it's only fair that I declare that now, because it's only fair. I'm kind of running out of towns where I don't have clients, so please bear that in mind. It was only fair that I declare that, and it's the right thing to do. So without further ado, let's go and have a look. So what are we looking at here? We are looking at between the 1st of January 2021 and the 2nd of March 2026. So we're looking at 5 years plus the year that we are in. You can measure anything from exchange, fall throughs, new instructions, price changes, relists, sold contracts, and withdrawns. The postcodes that we are looking at is SG1 and SG2. You can go and look at postcode districts if you want. We've switched new homes off, just so you're aware. And as I said, we're looking at all price ranges. This particular graph here shows you of the 9,742 properties of new instructions that have come on the market, the different price ranges that they're fallen into, price bands. And then separately here, you can see here that the number of new instructions each month and how they compare to other months in that same month. So you can see here that in January, 205 properties came on the market compared to 156 the year before. And again, let's just look here. So 192, and probably the average is around 100. So another 15%, 20% more, no, nearer 10% more properties that come on the market. So let's remember here what the average price is. And this is really important, ladies and gentlemen, because we can judge an estate agent on where they are on the pecking order. So the posh agents with the higher average property price will have a higher figure. So they're going to be more your Waitroses, and then you've got the middle markets, which is more your Tesco's, and then you've got the Aldis and Lidls at the bottom. But it gives you a good idea where they stand in the marketplace. So without further ado, let's go to William H. Brown. And we can see that their average price is 333,000, which is slightly below. And we have the famous Christmas trees of the Boxing Day. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. You can spot a Connell sequence a mile off by their Christmas spikes. What's your thoughts on Boxing Day promotions?
I think in some agents right across our business, some agents use it very successfully, and some don't believe in it at all. I think ultimately it's horses for courses. I think some people will feel it's a real benefit to their business. I mean, I noticed another agency, Hart, this year, instead of doing a big Boxing Day launch, did a big January launch. Do I think that that is a big drive and is going to mean that you list more houses? No, I think it just means that you have a different pattern, and we were talking about patterns quite a lot earlier, a different pattern than the next agent. You know, of course there is all the drama and the excitement and the hype about Rightmove and the uplift from Christmas Day, but of course there's going to be an uplift from Christmas Day because people are not looking for houses on Christmas Day. I think ultimately if you're motivated to list your property or to buy a property, whether it's Boxing Day or New Year's Day or the week after, I don't think it makes a huge difference, if I'm totally honest.
Like you
But
say,
it's all it's a marketing ploy, right? It's
marketing to
like
get
buy a load of cards on Valentine's Day.
Indeed. And again, let's not, let's remember that yes, you might be 25%, but it's 25% off a low number. So, you know,
Exactly.
what
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
I would say though, if I put a mental trend line through that, I would say William H. Brown are growing from 2021, where they were
Yeah.
around 7 or 8% now, and they're now
Yeah.
hovering around that 10 or 11% mark. So massive well done. In fact, the name William H. Brown came from near Grantham. And I know it's
Oh,
all,
really?
yeah, you
Mhm.
go. Comes from a little town called
Everything starts in Grantham at the
well,
tea
it's
time.
close, Sleaford, but yes, but yeah, and actually, I met senior management, my wife, when we both worked at William H. Brown. There you go.
Ah,
There
so a
you,
bit nostalgic for you then.
there you
I mean,
go.
it's interesting actually to look at that market. If you look, it's reasonably tight up there at the top, isn't it? There's no real dominant player. So that's really and actually they're not that's the corporate. The next two I believe are independents. So
Yes.
Potterells and Own Homes are independents. Then you go back to Connells. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. The two independents are holding their own up there against the mire of the corporates.
Okay, let's go to Putrils, and they're at 484. So therefore, and we will, ladies and gentlemen, we will look at the last year to see if there's any shakers and movers coming up, and we will look at the upper quartile because again, I think it's important to do that. And what I would say there is that that's not okay. That's holding its own. Very spiky, isn't it, Verona? You
It
know,
is. Their pattern is very different. I would say they're not proponents of the Boxing Day spike, but yeah, that is quite.
but it's
But I
very
mean, it's
feast
difficult
and
to tell because that's over 6 years, isn't it?
but it's very feast and famine.
Feast and famine. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it is
yeah.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
you know
not quite sure why.
Okay, okay. So own homes. Again, Spike, it looks like you've had a really good 2025 there, though. So
Yeah,
absolutely well
yeah,
done
yeah, they
there.
did.
Connell,
Interesting that the average house price on Potterells was 484, I think. So they're obviously attracting the higher end of the prices of the properties in that area.
we are going to have a look at the upper quartile
You're
in a
going to look at that.
second.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Connell's, okay, so we
Mm,
got some Christmas spade bounces. Yes, all good stuff there. But
yeah.
generally, unlike your sister at William H. Brown, your market
Seems to
share,
be going in the other direction, doesn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Let's
I
go.
guess the Connells group is going to be happy with that because if they may be taken from each other, and that's their strategy, right? So they've got two, three, often four brands in the same town. It means that they've get a higher chance of winning the instruction.
Who knows? Right, there's Hart, who don't like to be called an.
Also,
Okay, so again, a slight drifting from 23, but then hold our own then. So again, nothing wrong there.
yeah.
Taylor's, okay, looks
Mm,
like you had a good
that's
21.
downward trend for sure.
Agent Hybrid, Hunters, can't see the yellow there, but it's
Yeah.
looks like you had a bad 25.
Mm,
Jeffrey Matthew Estates. So I'm
mm.
just going to knock this because it's not fair to do March as on its
No,
own.
it isn't.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's only
Yeah.
one day. Okay, general
Yeah.
drift downwards there.
Yeah.
Mather Marshall, I think they've renamed themselves to Mather Estates.
But not
Massive.
M&M.
No, don't. Homes and mortgages, purple bricks.
Yeah, I mean, what this looks like to me is that the three or four brands at the top who are getting most of the market share are actually are gaining share from those lower down. That's what it seems to be, the bigger getting bigger.
Right, we said that we would look at the upper just the last year. So let's have a look.
So
So
we've reduced this down now to from 1st of Jan last year
yeah,
to end of Feb this year. Yeah.
yes. So we've got a pretty big spike there. So I don't who's that? IW Estates. Looks like you've come in fresh. Okay,
Mm,
so that and again, I don't know this for a fact, but normally when someone comes in as strong as that, it's either a rebrand or someone's
yeah.
bought someone else out and just moved the whole
Yeah.
of their stock across. But we don't know
Yeah.
that for a fact, so we're just surmising there.
But given
Okay,
that it drops back down again, that's what it would suggest.
okay. William H. Brown, Buttrell's.
Yeah. Yeah, it's much more difficult to see a real trend over
It
that
is.
period of time, isn't it? Yeah. Um, Interesting that the Puttrells, their average price point increased significantly just over the last year. So it was 484 if you look at the long-term picture, whereas it went up to five something in the last 12 months.
So let's
So
go.
that could account for those spikes,
There
because
you
those
go.
type of properties.
Right, there you go. There's Putrels,
Yeah,
and look how much they are pulling.
yeah. They're definitely the dominant player in the premium market in Stevenage.
They certainly are. Okay,
Yeah.
so there you go. That's all good stuff there, I think. Let's now
Hmm.
move on and look at this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's an awful lot of stuff happening here. Okay, so what I want us to do is let me explain where there is some absolute gold in here, and there is a lot of fluff. I want you to ignore the new instructions market share, because you've already had a look at those with it on the previous graph. I want you to ignore the sale agreed, okay, and the sold subject to contract percentage. These is where the true magic happens, okay. You see, if you look at the exchange percentage, and again, I know you know this, Verona, but this is for someone that hasn't watched the show before.
Sure.
Okay, the exchange percentage and your withdrawn percentage add up both all to 100%, because this is, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is how reading data enables you to find the gold. A property only leaves an estate agent's books if she exchanges or withdraws. So therefore, what we know for a fact is in the last 2 years and we're going to put this in, so 219 plus 166 is 385, okay? 219 plus 166, okay? So of the 385 properties that have left William H. Brown's books in the last 2 years, in the postcodes that we have mentioned, 219 of those have exchanged contracts, which means you've been paid on 56.88% of the homes that you have left your books. So you have a 56.8% chance of getting the house sold. Okay. The average in the town is 58.7. Let's go and have a look at some of the stats here. Puttrell's at 64.69. And then we've got some great numbers there. Own Homes at 74.5. We've got
Yeah.
Chandler's at 77. We've got Calm Estates at 77. Mather's at 61. So I mean, if I was, an agent, if I was, say, agent hybrid at 71, I could. This is how you would do it, ladies and gentlemen. And again, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to my maths. So, but again, just showing you the power of data here is this. So I'm agent hybrid, which means I'm at 71.43, and I'm up against, say, William H. Brown at 56.88. So that's what I've done, ladies and gentlemen. 71.43 divided by 56.88, and that is 1.25. Those of you that know your maths means that's 25.5% chance. So basically, what that means is Agent Hybrid could say, if they're up against William H. Brown, we have a 25.5% greater chance of getting you moved than William H. Brown. And here
Yeah.
are the stats to prove it. And it's what you said earlier on, Verona, in terms of the stats and having data
Standing
to
out.
back. Okay,
Yeah.
let's have a look here. Well, we've got some other numbers here, and again, there's avocado property. Again, I've already declared my interest, but again, if I was, say, avocado property, let's just punch those numbers in. 81.91. I could divide that by.
Fantastic.
I could do.
82% is
I mean, it's the
fantastic.
best in the town, and the
Yeah.
average in the town is 58.77.
Yeah.
So the avocado estate agent could say that if they put their house on the market with that particular agent, they have a 39.37% greater chance of getting them moved than the average Stevenage estate agent. That's
And
really
by the way,
interesting.
the average in the town includes avocado, which is 80%. So if they were stripped out of the number, that chance would be a lot higher. That percentage would be higher.
So, again, just have a look at all your numbers there, ladies and gentlemen. But, what I would say is this: 60s is great, 70s is amazing, and 80% is absolutely fine. And what I
Outstanding.
can I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, again, I know you are a big fan of the self-employed estate agency model, because you have that as part of your arsenal, is that the self-employed estate agency model sells more houses, gets the house sold quicker, and also gets more money for the house. I've got the data somewhere. I share it on social media. If anyone wants to follow me, I'd probably push it out most hour. I'm a big fan of the self-employed model, but I'm also a fan of independent estate agents as well. And I think the magic thing is it doesn't really matter what model you run, is are you running it for yourself or are you running it for the client? And your I mean, again, we're not going to pull the national figures up, but your figures for your exchange ratio at Yopa are very, very good, aren't they? You
They
did,
are. They're fantastic. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm very proud of that. And we take a lot of, or have historically, definitely less so. And I think that we have 20 EA to thank for that because it shows the data without any emotion or perspective from somebody else's view. So we definitely care very deeply about selling the property because just because we've taken the fee up front does not mean that we don't care because if we're not doing the job for our customers, then we do not have a business for the future. So it's massively important to us. And yeah, our exchange rates are very good.
Let's move on and look at fall through rates. The average fall through rate is 24.31. And we're just looking down there. Is there any notable ones? Taylor's have a low fall through rate at 17.93.
Mm.
Jeffrey Matthew has a higher fall through rate at 31. Puttrell's at 23. I will just say for the record that Puttrell's with an exchange ratio of 64 is really good in the high price range. And in fact, what I'm going to do now,
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
I think what I'm going to do, just to show, show a bit of love to Puttrell's, is
yeah.
this. Here we go. So it looks like agent high. Oh, okay. So there's some number
Interesting.
that is particularly interesting. We can't switch the new homes over there. So agent hybrid, you do particularly well. So that does surprise me. Let's go over 1 million just to see if it makes any difference. So again, ladies and gentlemen, you can change the stats if you're on a marketing mission. Let's just wait for that to come through. Has that changed anything?
Not that I can see. Still 51% exchange rate.
What is that
And
look
that's what
like?
it was on the 600K. So maybe there's no difference in the
I'm going to clear
properties.
up. There we go. Let's just take that up. There we go.
Okay, 41% has dropped to 41% in
Okay.
over 975, which we know the higher price properties have a more challenging sales rate. And
We,
it's still, oh, actually, somebody there 66%, which looks pretty good.
but again, if they're really no numbers, what I would say is this:
Yeah.
I've just done that exercise for 100 locations in the UK, and that is everywhere in the UK has that fall off, apart from one location, and it's Harpenden in Hertfordshire.
Ah,
Okay,
interesting.
and it just and I said,
Do we
yeah,
know why? Is there any specific
well,
reason?
it's kind of one of those places that everyone wants to live.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and so
It's
so
the
again,
affordable St. Albans, isn't it? Reasonably affordable St. Albans. Yeah.
it I think it's posher than St Albans.
Is it now? Oh,
Yeah,
okay. All right.
I
Well,
believe
that
it
was,
is.
yeah.
But I was thinking, all right, well, I'll split it up, like not up to like 750,000. We'll go up to million. No, it kept growing. Take it up to a
Yeah.
million and a half, kept growing. Took it up to three
Interesting.
million, it was still growing.
Mm, yeah.
Interesting. Right. Okay. So you fall through rates. This is what's falling through. Let's see. Okay. So IW Estates at Stevenage at 18. That's really good. Taylor's at 17. Avocado at 18. McManus at 15. Again, anything in the
All really
teens
good.
is good. I wonder if you're
Yeah.
using reservation agreements there. Price changes. Who changes their prices? On average, 36.88% of properties, 36.88% of properties get price reduced. So you've got the two big boys and girls, which is William H. Brown and
Doing a good job.
Puttrell's.
Yeah.
Okay,
They're
in the
on it.
40s. Anyone else? 54. Who's that? Hunters.
Hunters,
Hmm.
they're on it. But
Okay.
then is that an overvaluing price in the first instance? It gets to a point where you've passed the tipping point. You're doing too many.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's price reductions where you can salami it off and it makes your price reductions look good, but you're not actually
Yep.
doing any good. Can we
Yep.
remind ourselves that hunters are slipping with their market share? Okay, and let's have a look. Interestingly, look, price changes with avocado at 18.82%. Let's have who else is really good? IW, like we said. And who else is really good? Taylor's at 15. So, sorry, no, that's Fall Thrus. My apologies.
That's fall throughs.
Okay, price reductions. So, avocado 18. Who else is really good? So, isn't it interesting that the bigger agents have more price reductions?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So, let's put this into context. We've got some overvaluing stats here. Okay.
Hmm.
So what we're looking at here is this. There's lots of data on here, and I'll explain it all. Okay, when a house goes on the market, the 20EA have a what's called an automated valuation model, a bit like a Valpal figure. Others are available, and will compare that against what you put it on the market for. So William H. Brown, on average, in the last 2 years, have overvalued by 0.34, which is nothing wrong with that. Who else is got a slightly higher figure? Connell's at 1.2. There's no one really there.
Leaders down there at 4.7, albeit this small
But they are
market, but
small. You've got
4.7. Yeah.
what you've got with this is anything towards the bottom you have to take with a very big pinch of salt
Yeah.
because of the numbers are all a bit all over the place. Okay.
Yeah.
So so that's your overvaluing stat. This one here is what price did you achieve off the original asking price? So on average, 2.25 less than the original asking price. But Hart achieved 0.76% more and avocado 1.64. Now they don't sound that much, so therefore, and a lot of people don't like percentages. So if everyone put on a £400,000 house, what would each agent get for it? And on average, most agents would get on average £394,492 for that property. Okay. So Hart can say, because that's what that's saying is this, Hart can say, we will get you £10,890 more for your property compared to an average agent in Stevenage. And if they were, which is very powerful, especially if they're up against fees,
Yep. Yep.
and and then again, let's go to avocado. They get 13,000. So again, the chap at avocado could say, on average, I will get you £13,504 and 21 pence more for an average 400 grand house in Stevenage. That's really
And and I have a 40% greater chance of selling it than the average agent in this town. So, and this is where the power comes in. So, adding the various layers of data and insights to build into your pitch to attract. So, going back to your three biggest challenges, Chris, getting in the lounge in the first place, converting when you're in the lounge, and then getting it sold. So, we're dealing with the conversion in the lounge, and then we're dealing with the getting it sold and optimizing the price.
if you look at avocados, because again, their social media is truly exceptional. They've got a good balance of brand and person. But there are some other great. I've looked at some of their other social medias and some good other agents in there that need, Patrols, I think is good, bit old school, but still good.
Yeah.
It's a
It's a more
balance.
traditional approach, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Okay, so there's lots of important data. Let's go and look at timescales. We can see the average agent takes 60 days to get a property from new instruction to sale agreed, and 124 days, which is 2 days more than national average, to get a property through to completion. And then you can just go down there. So IW Estates, here we go, 31 days between new instruction and sale agreed, and 102 days. If you go to William H. Brown, 72 days to find a buyer and 125 days to get a sale agreed. So If you've got your speed, if you're looking for a speedy sell, this again proves what you're talking about. Right, let's go and have a look finally at the lettings. And there is no surprise that open rent are
It
around.
would be a surprise now if open rent were not at the top of this list when we look at these graphs.
Um, a lot of, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people blamed purple bricks for the ruining of a state agency many years ago. I mean, their most market share was 5-6% tops.
Yeah.
This is the biggest problem in a state agency at the moment is open rent. And let me blow your mind with a stat, ladies and gentlemen. 20EA have looked at, for the last 3 years, every single listing that Open Rent have put on the market, and 51% of them were previously on the market with you, a high street agent.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
scary stat.
That is a scary stat. And it comes down to the fact is that it's not as if you're not worth your money, it's you're not proving that you're worth the money. And this is where the Renters' Rights Act is a golden opportunity for you to start pulling some of these back, putting out some fear marketing and then attracting people to you with landlord evenings and things like that. That's the way forward. Let's look at own homes. Well, I mean, what I would say is this, is that with open rent, most agents are drifting. I would say that is not drifting. So well done,
They're
open
holding
rent.
their own. Yeah, definitely. Good to see.
Agent hybrid, slight drifting.
Slight drift.
Again, new instructions, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I used to be national sales manager for Belvoir on there, and I've got a formula which basically you can tell how many age properties you have in their portfolio by the number of properties that they put out. That number does change if it's a city, it does change if it's a university town, and it changes it if it's also some peculiarities on the south coast. But apart from that, you can tell within about 5% what their portfolio is. And again, so that generally lower new instructions means lower portfolios. Belvoir comes from Grantham, obviously, centre of the property universe. Taylor's, growing, well done. Homes and mortgages, steady. Buttrell's, I'm surprised about that, Buttrell's. A long established name.
Yeah.
We've got more. Your Move, Mather Estates. We'll just go down on these, just see.
Growing.
Okay, nice and tight numbers.
Consistent. Yeah.
Okay. Right, okay. Fine. Sharers, oh, great one. Some final thoughts.
I don't think I have anything particularly inspirational to say, apart from the fact that I think we are bumbling along, as I mentioned earlier. You know, I don't think anybody's getting particularly excited about where we're at the minute. The first couple of months of the year have been reasonably predictable. As we talked about quite a lot through this session, the importance of patterns and cycles and profiles of how our year is going to play out. I think this year is actually going to buck the trend from last year, so it's not going to be exactly the same. So as we enter the next few months, the things that I'm very focused on in terms of our business, and I would highly recommend, is as we enter the spring selling season, how are we pricing properties to get the most attention? How are we marketing properties to not only present the property in the best way, but also to present us as agents to get us into the next lounge, going back to the three challenges, and ensuring that we are standing out from the crowd, using the data, using the insights that we've got, but also using our social media presence to promote ourselves as agents as well as the properties that we sell, because the two things, of course, go hand in hand.
Absolutely bang
So
on.
it's going to be an interesting few months, I think.
Well, Verona, thank you for your time today. This show will be coming out on Friday, which will be the day after the Women in the State Agency conference, not conference. So I wish you well on that one. It'll be
Thank
absolutely
you.
fantastic.
I'll see you there.
Indeed. Thank you for watching the show, and we'll see you on week 9. We're a different town and looking at the property market with a different guest. Verona, thank you for your time, and thank you for watching.